Again, more pellet blast wire on the left, but also there is a mason jar sitting on these boxes here. Legend says we used to have a movie shot still down here.
No.
Sad, but no. That was probably someone's lunchbox, maybe had soup or something. Put it in the mason jar, took it down here, left it on an electric motor for half the day, and that probably put soup up. Another crystal pod cut up on the left here. We call this one the waterfall. Very pretty formation. And up at the roof there, we call that the slab of bacon. Kind of cool. Again, where that water came down through a pipe, gathered here and solidified, just like the submarine back there. We are traveling parallel to a rail bed on the right side. As we make the turn here, it is also going to turn in the room next to us. All right. Next one is on the left side here. This weird big slab of salt down here. Now, this is what we call the tombstone slab. It's called that because the director of the museum was down here mapping out this route. She laid down upon the top of the rock and we sacrificed her. No. She said, hey, I want to be buried here. So that's why it's called the tombstone. Now, unfortunately, she still is alive, so we can't make good on that promise yet. But maybe in the future. Now, why does this piece of salt exist? We have two different theories. So at this point in time, they were doing nuclear testing in this mine. They were trying to decide if this was a good place to store nuclear waste long term. They eventually decided against it, but every experiment needs a control surface, somewhere that's not affected by the experiments you're doing on the salt. So this could have been the control surface for some of those experiments. Second theory, also at this point in time, the Kerry Salt Company, who owned the mine, was refurbishing their office in Hutch, and they wanted a giant monolith of salt to stand right in the middle of the lobby. So this could have been the first time they just picked a different rock, or it could have been part of nuclear testing. We're not really sure either way. Those are the two best theories. All right. Now, speaking of that nuclear testing, coming up on the left side here is, well, an original, unblemished AEC testing site. Now, on the dark ride, Carrie showed you these tripod-looking things, creep and flow experiments, and those ones on the dark ride are pretty cool, but they were placed there. They were not originally there. This is a test station that has not been changed or moved. These creep and flow experiments, as we can see, pole coming up, pole coming from below, measure the gap in between, that will tell you how fast the mine is closing. You can also see piano wire going from roof to floor here. In case the roof were to come down, you can see the change in the wire, and from wall to wall, you can see that piano wire running across the room. That is to see if the walls are coming in, the wire will droop, or if the walls stretch, the wire will snap. Now, we can also see a old piano wire box right there, so we can know that that is in fact piano wire. And there's a whole lot of footprints in this area that are original, and a whole lot of cigarette butts and cigarette packs, because they were smoking like stacks down here. So very, very cool original test site. Only one we have that is not disturbed. Don't get off, don't get off.
I'll get it.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome, Jacob.
Man, I feel like a snake eating its tail.
All right, I'm good.
All right. All right, now, I told you everything down here again would be 50 by 50 foot pillars, and of course I'm not lying, but again, there are exceptions to the rule. This pillar on the left side is a 50 by 50 pillar. This is beautiful. That is absolutely how it should look. But if you follow my laser up and over to the right side, you'll notice the pillar on the right is too long. It should end right about there. Any guess why they didn't finish blasting that? Any guess?
Dirty.
Dirty, yes, you're right. There's a pipe coming right down through the wall there, and down below there is a very large section of red salt. Muddy, cows won't lick it, red tastes bitter, cows won't lick it, so they left it behind. Now, they did think that there may be good salt on the back side, so they did blow out the back wall over there. It turns out it was all still too dirty, so they left it behind as well in those big piles back there. Left it behind, never come back again. Pretty crazy. That's what we call a stub wall. That's a wall you start running, but you do not finish. A stub wall. Two more piles of salt left behind, too dirty. Miners didn't take it with them. And we are about to make a giant figure eight. As I drive over through this next railhead here, you might recognize this area. I'm going to go straight, but if you look to your left, you'll notice those two ore cars that we passed by earlier. Going back through that moon landing, there is on the right and left, lots of footprints and track marks. Last time we took a right, I'm taking a left. Now, loading ramps, they put everywhere, anywhere they needed them, they try to weasel them in. So coming up on the left side is another one of those loading ramps, and two sets of rails on the other side. Another magazine room on the right. Now, you may notice a little bit of difference in the smell of the air in here. You also may feel a little bit more moisture, or the air may feel a little bit colder. That's because as we keep moving forward, we are getting very close to where our fresh air enters this portion of the mine. That is a tunnel called East Main. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Water barrel on the right, probably not drinking water, but probably for adding to their lead acid batteries. All right. Next thing is coming up on the right side here is this beautiful crystal pod left behind. Now, this crystal pod here is called the Nat Geo pod because this was featured as the front cover page as in an edition of National Geographic. Now, the picture was taken back in the 60s. There are cigarettes sitting right there from the photographer at the time, and I'm sorry, people at the front, but if you look directly below,
Jacob?
yes?
We dropped the light, so it carries off picking it up.
Okay,
Pull forward.
gotcha, thank you. Again, sorry people at the front, but back there on the wall, if you look directly below where the laser is on the ground, you'll notice a yellow box of Kodak film sitting down there on the floor. So more evidence of the photographer being here. Now, when they took that picture, there is a person standing in the picture. He's standing right there, pointing up at the crystal pod like he has a finger gun, kind of pointed at the pod, pointed out to the photographer. It's a pretty cool picture. If you ever do find it, that is what it looks like. All right, now this is the one time I want you guys to go ahead and turn off your flashlights. All right. Dreaming while you're walking around awake. Now, modern miners have electric lights like me up here at the front, so it's not really a problem to see down here. These do work pretty well, and this one light on my forehead will last roughly about 12 hours. But back in the 1950s, when this area was being mined, they didn't have electric headlights. They used something called a carbide lamp. It was a small brass device with two chambers. The top would be filled with calcium carbide rock. The bottom would be filled with, the top would be filled with water. The bottom would be filled with calcium carbide rock. The water would slowly drip from the top to the bottom onto those rocks, creating a chemical reaction releasing acetylene gas. That would then burn as a 3-inch flame on your forehead. Because that's a great idea. Yeah. Now, they didn't use those super long in this mine, but they were surprisingly bright. You'd always travel with a buddy in case your light blew out, you'd have theirs. But you can imagine going around the pillar and your light blowing out. It gets pretty dark pretty quick. All right, go ahead and turn your light back on. That was ridiculously dark. Yeah. Just ready for face. Normally I would just keep going straight, but we have a long frame, so I'm going to make a loop around the pillar here so we can see the next stop a little bit better. Something other people don't really get to see. We've already seen an example of it. But as we go around the pillar here, if you look on this side, you'll notice 4 sampling strips. I believe they're on the floor. There they are. Right there. There's one of those 4 rolling holes in the wall. Now, from 1923 until 1961, you take a tour of an active mine. As a regular person, you can walk down here into the mine and tap a power man on the shoulder while he was filling a hole with dynamite and ask him what he was doing. Those tours did stop in 1961 over safety concerns. I wonder why. But frankly, the main reason was probably a financial one. When they were bringing tourists underground, they couldn't hoist any salt, and the miners were giving tours. So if miners were giving tours, what weren't they doing? Mining, exactly. So they were slowing down, they weren't hoisting as much salt, they were losing a whole lot of money. So again, in 1961, they stopped giving those tours. Now, over to the left, this room here is a depot. You'll notice the corners in this room are painted white. That is to let the locomotive operator or the engineer know that this is the depot for tourists. They would let them off in this room. Now, on the white post right there, there is a map that says you are here, and a purple arrow pointing out towards us, towards the mine face, which begs the question, why did they need arrows to tell them where to go? Did they have tour guides? We're not really sure. But you'll also see this man trip here. This is a man trip that the miners built specifically for visitors down here in the mine. They built 3 of these. There's the one here on display, there's one back in the mining gallery, and then there's one that is southeast of the museum about a mile away. Sorry, southwest of the museum about a mile away, where they abandoned it back in 1961. And it has not moved since. So, very, very cool guest depot there. Now, earlier I talked about East Main, where the fresh air is coming into the mine. As we move into this tunnel, this is East Main. This is the main tunnel going east from the shaft, bringing air into the mine. Now, on the wall to your right, you'll notice that date tag, 11/1/54. Now, that one is really important. Please do remember that date. Now, they had already mined out the other half of this tunnel, all the way ahead of us into the left. They wanted to stop mining on that end, come to this end, and mine the two tunnels together and meet them in the middle. Now, let's think about the tools they have to mine accurately. Pencil, paper, compass, dynamite. That's all they got. And they would also use things called sight bobs, which are strings that they would hang in the middle of the room every about 25 feet and hang the lights off. You could look down the strings, and if they were all lined up, you know you were mining in a perfectly straight line. So, pencil, paper, math, strings on the roof, dynamite. That's all they got. So, let's see how precisely they hit the other tunnel shell. And they started mining and mining and mining, 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 mining. Made a 45-degree turn, much easier to push air around a 45-degree turn than a 90. They kept mining, 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 mining. By December 1st of 1954, 1 month, they had made it right here. We just drove through a whole month worth of mining. They kept going and going and going and going and going. Made another 45-degree turn, complete the 90 around. Much more of a gradual turn. And then Happy New Year, January 1st of 1956 is right there. Sorry, 1955. There. As they were mining, they passed by a really cool formation on the right called the bony fish. It's a crystal pot, but looks like a fish. They kept mining, 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 and February 1st of 55, right here, whoa, they came to a stop. You'll notice these arches of salt over the middle of the tunnel here. This is where these two tunnels met together. Look how exactly they line up with each other. Honestly, isn't that a work of art? Like, how amazing is that? And as proof that, again, they didn't cheat here, they mined the two tunnels together. On the left side, you'll notice more tags. There's 10/1/54, which is actually the date that was all the way back there at the beginning of the tunnel that we're driving in. And there's some older tags here as well, even. For 7, 8, and 9/54. They were sitting here for a long time. But there's one more tag on the wall to your left that's even older, so it's really, really hard to see. It's right there. 6/1/1954. That one is not painted on with paint. That is burnt onto the wall with those open flame carbide headlamps I was talking about. You could draw with the open flame on the wall. Now, what this tells us is between June and July of 1954, the last old timer who had a carbide light either retired or switched to electric. That was the very last month he had open flame lights down in his mine. June 1st of 1954. Something fall off?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't fall on the ground.
You got it?
Yep.
Now as we keep going, if you look ahead and to the right, you'll notice more of those tags. There's one of those carbide tags, but it's not directly in the airflow, so it is much better preserved back behind that corner. Now, if I were to continue straight, this would lead us all the way back to the main mining shaft where our airflow is entering into the mine. However, I'm going to take a left through this cut. Now, there is evidence of a curtain hanging here. There are bolts on the wall here that have rusted out and across the ceiling and down on this side here. That is evidence of studs holding a curtain here that would separate the fresh airflow tunnel that we are driving out of. It would separate it from the exhaust tunnel that we're driving into. East Main is not one tunnel. It's two sister tunnels running parallel to each other. One is the fresh air main, one is the exhaust. One has fresh air coming in, one has the old air being forced out. And again, we are now sitting in the exhaust where the old air is being forced out. Now, you'll notice the rail bed is going through this tunnel and not the fresh air side. They would always, always, always build the rail bed in the exhaust airflow. Any guesses why they would do that?
Carbon monoxide.
Well, not necessarily. We didn't have any gas engines down here. Everything was electric.
Dust.
You're close on gas. Has to do with gases.
Oxygen.
Oxygen? No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. If we built the rail bed in the fresh airflow and our train caught fire, what would happen to the miners?
Suck it all in.
It'd kill them all. It would push all that smoke and exhaust straight out to where they were mining. So, if you build the rail bed in the exhaust and the train does catch fire, all the smoke and exhaust flows away from the miners straight out of the mine. And then the miners, trying to escape, they can just follow backwards through the fresh airflow back to the main shaft and go up through fresh air. So that's why always built the rail in the exhaust. All right. So we are coming up on our salt safari salt pile. On the dark ride, Kerry lets you get off and grab a piece of souvenir salt. He said it could be about as big as your fist. Out here on this safari, out of this pile on the right side of us here, if it fits inside that hard hat, however big it is, if you want it, you can take it. Just know you have to carry it. Same rules as the dark ride. Don't climb on it, don't lick it, don't throw it. If you'd like, you can go and exit to the right side, over to the right. Go and grab. The first one was a guy named Bill Tilton. He was a blasting supervisor. He was shooting some rooms very close to where we are right now, and he walked into a safe room where he should have been okay, but a rock ricocheted, came back, got him in the head, and took him out. The second guy was a guy named Fred Swepton. He was the train engineer. He was going out to get one last load of salt at the end of the day, and he didn't check if there were other trains on the tracks. There was another one coming in. They met around a blind corner, and Fred got a little bit smashed, and, well, they say they got him to the hospital before he died, but I'm not positive about that. It'd be a long ambulance ride, yeah. But, of course, since the 1950s, there have been massive advancements in mining safety, especially here in the United States. One of the greatest reasons that we should continue mining in the U.S., no matter what, is the safety records of mines in other parts of the world. Go on Facebook, look up a page called Mining in Punjab. It's an Indian coal mining company that uploads videos from their underground mine. It's like stepping back into the 1910s. It's terrifying. So if we're gonna mine, we have to do it safely, and well, we might have to do it here in the U.S. Since the creation of MSHA, or the Mine Safety and Health Administration, which is the government organization that oversees mining safety, it's the same thing as OSHA, but just for mining. Underground mining, statistically, is now safer than being a school teacher. Don't think about it too much. You'll notice we just came back through those stress attractor walls, big one wall, up for the overburden, and we are now bordering the 1940s panel of the mine, because on the right you see those 40 by 40 foot pillars. And coming up is another loading ramp on the right side of us, with a shuttle car still sitting on top of it. So it's a little bit easier to visualize how these actually function. The shuttle car would be full of salt that had been loaded by the joy loader. He would drive to this spot here. The salt would fall out the front of the conveyor belt into a hopper, then it would fly up and into the ore cars on the waiting track. The driving position from that is on the front left. So you drive forwards to unload the salt, and then you stand up and drive backwards to go back to the mine face to get loaded again. So you drive forwards and backwards. Now, as we keep going, you'll probably smell something a bit different in this area. It smells a bit sooty. That's because in this area we had one of our 2 fires that we've had down here in the mine. It happened on a weekend when no one was here, so thank God no one was injured. But on the left side, on that pillar there, you'll notice that piece of charred wood screwed into the wall. That is where an oil-bathed transformer was that caught on fire and incinerated itself over the weekend. So when the miners came back on Monday, nothing was dangerous to them, but it was smoky, so they had to ventilate out the entire mine. But you'll notice the roof is stained jet black from all the soot and smoke damage. And if you look on the pillars around us, like that one over to the left, you can see the top half is black, but not the bottom. That's why firefighters say crawl in a house fire. It will save your life. Calls to mind a particular mining disaster called the Sunshine Silver Mine disaster in northern Idaho. The Silver Mine was the largest producer of silver in American history at the time. And, well, that morning they went underground, about 160-ish miners. They noticed smoke, but to them smoke was just a regular thing. And it got thicker and thicker and thicker, and by the end of the day, only about 80 of them came back out topside. After that point, the government passed the Mining Safety Act, which created MSHA. Now mining is an entirely different business. Now, earlier at the beginning, we talked about the floor heaves. I said you can see a cool one. Man of my word, look over to the left. That's the largest floor heave we have in this area. I have been gone. I've been back here at the museum for about 2 months at this point. But 2 months ago, I had left.